Hi, folks. Chuck Mott here, and I just wanted to give an overview of what cognitive behavior therapists refer to as cognitive um, errors, cognitive distortions, automatic thoughts, that kind of thing. But I want to back up a little bit and just give an overview of what cognitive behavior therapy is. So, cognitive behavior therapy is literally thought behavior therapy. Cognitive is kind of has to do with your thinking, and what they do is they address your how you're thinking about a particular situation directly to stay away from these patterns of thinking that make things worse instead of better. And that's particularly with anxiety, folks with anxiety and depression. That's their go-to, right? That's one of the symptoms. So you want to address those negative thinking patterns. So essentially, cognitive behavior therapists believe that there's something that happens that would be they would call that the antecedent, right? The behavior is going to be your thought behavior, your right thought behavior therapy. The behavior is going to be your the way you're thinking about things and the way you're looking at it, and then there's going to be the consequence of that. They're also so that's the what they call the ABC model. There's also another section in there that just says, I need to come up with a better coping statement than what I'm telling myself, because this is just going to make me more angry, more depressed, more anxious, more a lot of things you probably don't want to be. So, and these kind of patterns of thought that work against you, they put in 1 to 10 categories that we're going to talk about today. So that said, we can go ahead and get started with this. The first cognitive error that we are going to talk about is going to be fortune telling, right? This is sort of kind of like looking into the future and knowing what's going to happen. I'll go back to the car not starting. Cognitive error, and we'll use fortune telling in that context. But that would be you wake up, you find out your car is not starting, and fortune telling would be kind of like looking into the future and seeing all these terrible things happening, right? Not really going to help you. It's not going to help you to say my car's not starting. I'm going to be late to work. I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to be able to go feed myself because I can't go get groceries, and just keep going down the rabbit hole where things just kind of get worse and worse for you. So you don't want to be fortune telling. You really don't know what's going to happen. You can't tell the future. Nobody can tell the future. And that's kind of it. So, and that's what you want to remind yourself of. You just say, you know what? None of this has happened yet. This is all going on in my mind. I need to figure out what the next step of this is going to be, instead of looking, fortune telling the future and just really kind of getting myself all worked up. So that's one. Another, I've got these written down here, so I'm just going to look away from time to time. Mind reading is another cognitive error. Mind reading would be where you know what somebody else is thinking, right? You can guess what somebody else is thinking. You might think this, you might be under some stress at work, and the boss gives you a little bit of, direction in which way to take it, and so you have that conversation with your boss, and you're thinking, he hates me. I'm going to end up getting fired. He's just telling me this. He's kind of giving me this as a verbal warning, even though he didn't call it one. This is kind of like a verbal warning. So this next, I'm going to end up getting, canned. That's good. That's what's going to happen if I don't hurry up and get all this stuff done the way that he wants me to do it. Or I'm going to get fired. I'm going to ruin my career. And he hates me. I mean, he thinks I'm just not a good employee. I'm, let's see, whatever. But you're kind of like trying to guess what your boss is thinking about this particular situation, and it's not necessarily true. Again, when we're anxious, when we're depressed, we're going to put a negative spin on those things. So that doesn't help either. So knowing that you can't tell the future. You can't mind read. You never really know what somebody else is thinking. Another example of this would be, I don't know, in relationships. You know what I mean? Maybe your wife doesn't think you're an idiot, you know, after all, or maybe she just doesn't think that you're whatever. You never know what somebody's thinking about until you approach the topic directly. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Just to remind you, that would be your coping statement. That would be in the D column. I don't know what she's thinking. I have no idea. I mean, I could ask, I suppose. I could like look for evidence that she believes that I'm a bad husband, but you don't know. So fortune telling, mind reading, those two kind of go together. Black and white thinking is looking at something in terms of being all good or all bad. So you're taking a class, you get a C in the class. The black and white is the black side of things is going to be saying this is not very good at all. See, I thought I had this a whole lot better. I don't understand this. I'm never going to be able to use this information. There must be something in my brain that just says that it's just not good. It's terrible. It's C is not a good grade. It's probably a mercy grade that they probably gave me, and you're going to look at everything all as being on the really dark side of things, maybe even catastrophizing a little bit, which we'll talk about. But the black is kind of seeing the complete negative. White is white not so bad, but we'll talk about minimizing and maximizing. But white, you don't want to ignore it. You don't want to say, I'll say C, I guess that's pretty good. I got a C. I could probably even study a little bit less and still get, you don't want to be going down that road either. You want to kind of come somewhere in the middle, and that's what you want to do when you're kind of getting into the black and white thinking. Nothing's really completely terrible, but it might be a warning sign here for you. So let's move on from there. Which brings us to minimizing and maximizing. It's kind of what we had just talked about. Minimizing is making too little of a situation. Maximizing is blowing it way out of proportion. Just because you were late to work doesn't mean you're going to get fired. Doesn't going to mean your career is going to get. That's the maximizing part of it. The minimizing part of it is just saying, late to work, not a big deal. I know they don't like it, but nothing's going to kind of come of it. It's okay if I show up a few minutes late all the time. Minimizing is making too little of a situation, and all the thoughts that kind of are connected with that. Maximizing is making the worst of the situation. So you don't want to be on either end of the spectrum. You want to be just like, problem solving. Well, okay, I'm late. I know they really want me to be on time. What can I do about this? Can I set my alarm a little bit earlier? Whatever kind of coping tools that you need to do to get yourself out of the you want to kind of brainstorm those sorts of things. But you don't want to make too little of the situation. You don't want to make too much of the situation. So that's minimizing and maximizing. Fallacy of fairness is the problem with kind of thinking in terms of being fair, of things needing to be fair, is that, for example, say you go out and work. Your wife is a stay-at-home mom or whatever, and when you come home and you just kind of plop down on the couch, and she's like, you know what? It's not really fair that I have to do everything in this house. I take care of the kids, I cook, I clean, I do the laundry. I shouldn't have to do everything. You should be helping out with some of this sort of stuff. So the wife is going to think that it really should be kind of on you to kind of pitch in and do some of the chores, and it's really not fair that she should have to do everything in the house. You're thinking, I work all day, I pay the bills, that's my job. Her taking care of the house and everything else, that's her job. It's not fair that she should be asking me to kind of come home and just kind of start cleaning. It's just not fair. So there's no answer when you're looking for something to be fair, there's no real answer in there, is there? you know. There's just a problem that needs to be solved. The wife, I can't get everything done. No matter what I do, I can't get everything done. I really don't really feel like I need to work this hard because my job's kind of a 24/7 job, and you go to work for 8 hours and you're done. You need to get in the problem solving mode and not looking and not saying to yourself, that's not fair. Fair is not really kind of, for the most part, does not exist. You can negotiate your way through situations like that, but that's the fallacy of fairness. So you don't want to just say, "Hey, that's not fair," and again, maybe it isn't fair, but it's not really. Telling yourself that it's not fair is not going to help the situation, and expecting something to be fair is a matter of personal opinion. So if you're telling yourself it's not fair, it's because you're thinking that it's not fair, when you could be thinking about what you can do to make the situation better. Fallacy of fairness. Overgeneralization. And a lot of these, you'll hear like a similar theme to all these, but overgeneralization is taking like one situation. We'll go back to being late to work. Taking one situation and just applying it across the board, right? So say you're late for work. Overgeneralization is going to be saying something like, I'm always late to work. I never get to work on time. I'm late for everything. I'm not just late for work. I'm late for dinner. I'm late for breakfast. I'm late for my doctor's appointments. I'm late, and it's just I just can't seem to ever be on time. If that's true, then you kind of want to kind of work on that problem. But chances are, you're not always late. You're not. It just doesn't. That's overgeneralizing. It doesn't do you any good to say I'm always late for this. I'm always late for that. I'm always. Most of the time, because it's not true. Also, it doesn't mean you're a terrible husband because you forgot to wash the dishes. You know, and then it's like, I always forget to wash the dishes, and I don't do any of you know. You don't want to overgeneralize something and say something applies all the time, right? When it doesn't. So that's overgeneralizing. I hope that's clear. Catastrophizing is pretty much what it sounds like. We had talked about that before. You get a bad review at work, and you look at it and you just say, that's it, my career's done, my job's going to be over soon, they're going to fire me, I'm a lousy employee, I'm just not a good employee, I don't even know why I have a job when I can't do one, and they're always kind of mad at me and giving me, a bunch of guff about things, the way that I do things. So I don't know, I guess that's it, my career is over, I'm never gonna keep a job. See some overlap in some of these things. But catastrophizing, making the absolute worst of the situation, kind of telling yourself all these things, doesn't get you in problem solving mode. It's just kind of a personal attack on yourself. And I like to use the example sometimes that you wouldn't tell a friend of yours because you got written up at work. Well, unless you're a jerk, or that, you know what, you're right. That's right. You got written up at work. You probably are a really lousy employee, and I think you're right. Your career is going to be over. I don't think there's any future in anything for you in anything that you do. You want to dump that friend, right? So you want to kind of ask yourself, would I be this critical of a friend of mine if he was in a similar situation? So that's catastrophizing, and what you can do about that. All or nothing is sort of, you can kind of probably find the similarities between maximizing, minimizing, catastrophizing, but all or nothing is just saying, again, just if you were late for work, again, all or nothing is just saying kind of, I'm always late, or looking at somebody and just says, that this guy, this guy with a blue hat. Every time I work with an employee with a blue hat on, it's just like, they're terrible. It's something about that blue hat that makes people just kind of really horrible employees and hard to work with. And every time I see somebody with a blue hat, that's it. I can't deal with it. Because they're all just terrible. All right. So all or nothing thinking, just kind of thinking, applying labeling somebody for an attribute or something like that, and just kind of thinking to the opposite, the extreme that they're all bad or they're all good on the other end, maybe, when that's not the situation either. So you don't want to be making overgeneralizations like that, and that kind of goes in line with labeling. Labeling is when you're the act of calling yourself an idiot. He's stupid. Racism, we're not going to use any kind of derogatory terms here, but racism is another way of labeling people, right? You just kind of try to make things neat and perfect and put things in a little box, and kind of in a negative box. It doesn't help you. So labeling is not good. Personalizing something and just saying, I'm just everything is my fault. This whole situation, my job shut down yesterday. Business hasn't been going good, and I guess that's all on me. That's like totally my fault. I don't know what I did to make everything go bad, but apparently I was the cause of the business being shut down. Not true. So many factors that go beyond just applying this stuff to yourself that reeks of like depression and anxiety and things like that. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to do that to yourself. But those are some of the cognitive errors, cognitive distortions that they like to look at. These are things that you don't want to be doing for yourself, because they'll like result in you being anxious and depressed, or more anxious and depressed, or maybe you are already anxious and depressed, and these are just going to kind of make things worse. So cognitive behavior therapists would go after those particular kinds of thinking and really kind of just ask you, is that really kind of how it was? Is there really any evidence for the fact that your boss hates you, or did they just tell you you need to do your paperwork? Right? So that's automatic thoughts / cognitive distortions / thinking errors in general, and that's kind of what CBT focuses on. So hope this was helpful. Feel free to subscribe, reach out to me with any questions, comment below, like this channel, subscribe to this channel, and I look forward to talking to you guys again and putting up some more content, okay? Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon.